If you replaced your roof in the last 10 years, or you're about to transfer $15,000, $20,000, or even $30,000 to a roofing contractor this summer, there is a better than even chance you're about to buy a roof that will fail in half the time the salesman enthusiastically told you it would. And the materials sitting in your driveway right now were explicitly designed that way on purpose by corporate executives who will never spend a single 40-degree day living underneath them. Buying a new roof is one of the most stressful, disruptive, and expensive things you will ever do to your family home. You hand over a massive financial deposit, you cross your fingers, and you place blind trust in the hope that the people climbing onto your house actually know exactly what they are doing. But the Australian roofing industry possesses a very dark, incredibly expensive secret. It is a secret that the major material manufacturers and the massive volume building companies desperately want to keep hidden from the general public. Let us go back in time to 1980. Your grandfather realizes he needs a new roof, so he calls a local roofer. He does not call a massive, faceless call center based in another country. He does not fill out a form on a slick lead generation website that instantly sells his personal data to the highest bidder. And he definitely does not call a massive corporate franchise with a cartoon mascot printed on the side of a shiny utility vehicle. He calls a local tradesman. That tradesman shows up at the house with a dedicated permanent crew of professionals who had been doing exactly one thing their entire working lives. They strip the old roof completely down to the bare timber trusses. They carefully inspect the underlying structural integrity of the home. Then they lay heavy-duty, sarking across the battens. They do not use the paper-thin, easily torn synthetic foil that modern, rushed crews unroll as fast as humanly possible today. They secure dense, heavyweight terracotta clay tiles or thick gauge steel that was genuinely engineered to handle the brutal, unforgiving, and highly volatile Australian weather conditions. And here is the most critically important thing to understand. Those old roofs actually lasted. They did not just survive for 15 years or 20 years on a particularly good day. They routinely lasted 40 years, sometimes 50 years, and in many established heritage suburbs across the country, they are still sitting up there perfectly intact today. This incredible longevity did not happen because the builders of the past had access to secret, ancient manufacturing technology that we simply do not possess today. It happened because the building trade utilized something it has almost completely abandoned in the modern era: uncompromising standards. And sitting right behind those high standards was immense personal accountability. A roofer working in 1980 built every single roof, knowing absolutely that he was going to drive past that exact house for the rest of his natural life. One terrible roof that failed and leaked in year 6, and the entire local suburb knew about the failure before the leak was even fully patched up. You simply did not cut corners because those cut corners were entirely visible to every single person who had ever shaken your hand at the local community pub or the hardware store. That perfect, natural alignment of professional pride and community accountability is now completely gone. What has aggressively replaced it is a highly optimized, profit-driven corporate system that is almost perfectly engineered to fail on a predictable, calculated schedule. It is designed to extract the maximum possible amount of money from your bank account on the way out, and crucially, it is designed to leave absolutely nobody legally responsible when the water inevitably starts pouring through your living room ceiling. Starting in the late 1990s, 3 massive, fundamental shifts occurred that completely gutted the Australian roofing industry from the inside out. First, the manufacturing sector heavily consolidated. If you walk into any major commercial hardware store today, The dozens of seemingly different brands and competing logos on the shelves are secretly owned by just a handful of massive multinational monopolies. When just 2 or 3 corporations control the materials that go on 90% of Australian rooftops, the competitive pressure to actually engineer a better, stronger, longer-lasting product completely evaporates. The primary corporate goal aggressively changes. It becomes a ruthless race to the bottom, figuring out how to manufacture the absolute cheapest possible product that still technically clears the bare minimum requirements of the Australian building standards. They reduce the thickness of the steel, they use cheaper chemical dyes in the concrete, and they thin out the protective coatings, all to save a few cents per square meter while passing the long-term failure risk directly onto you. Second, the traditional, reliable contractor model broke down entirely. The market today is heavily dominated by volume operations that run on razor-thin profit margins. These sales companies win major jobs by ruthlessly undercutting every single honest, independent tradesman on price alone. But to actually make a financial profit on a suspiciously cheap quote, they have to move incredibly fast. When your entire business model entirely depends on how fast your subcontracted, temporary crew can finish one house and aggressively drive to the next one, every single decision made up on your roof tilts completely towards speed rather than structural quality. The crew will deliberately choose to use thinner sarking foil because it is much lighter to carry up the ladders. They will use fewer fastening clips because skipping clips saves an entire hour of manual labor. They will aggressively rush the vital, highly complex lead flashings around your brick chimney and your expensive skylights. Absolutely none of this sloppy, rushed work is visibly apparent to you from the ground on the day the utility vehicle pulls away from your driveway. But all of it combined takes decades off the overall expected lifespan of your new roof. Third, the concept of the warranty evolved from a solemn promise of enduring quality into a highly deceptive, weaponized sales tool. When the enthusiastic salesman sits at your dining room table, drinks your coffee, and aggressively points to a shiny 25-year warranty printed on his glossy brochure, you naturally feel a deep sense of safety and security. But that specific warranty document was never written by a builder who cares about your home. It was meticulously drafted by a dedicated team of corporate lawyers whose sole professional job is to make absolutely sure the manufacturer almost never has to actually honor it and pay out a claim. The dense, fine print is deliberately filled with completely impossible ongoing maintenance schedules and incredibly vague loophole clauses. These clauses immediately shift the legal blame entirely back onto you, the homeowner, the exact moment something eventually goes wrong. If the roof rusts, they will claim you did not wash it frequently enough. If the roof leaks, they will claim an act of God or a severe weather event that exceeds their highly specific wind rating parameters. This brings us to the 4 massive hidden failure points that the volume-building contractors desperately hope you never take the time to learn about or understand. If you know exactly what to look for, you can spot these expensive scams a mile away and protect your family. Failure point 1 is the great material scam. Whether you are buying modern concrete tiles or large metal sheets, the physical materials themselves have been getting progressively lighter, progressively thinner, and significantly weaker over the last 2 decades. The ultraviolet radiation from the sun in the Australian climate is absolutely brutal and entirely unforgiving. It ruthlessly bakes the cheap color coating on modern concrete tiles. You must understand that concrete tiles are essentially just molded, heavy cement with a very thin layer of cosmetic paint sprayed on top. Within 5 to 8 short years of baking in the intense summer sun, that thin paint inevitably starts to break down and wash away into your gutters. The concrete tile then becomes a highly porous sponge. It becomes incredibly brittle, and it looks terribly faded and old. If a tradesman has to walk on a 10-year-old concrete tile roof to fix a television antenna, those weakened tiles will very often snap right in half right under his heavy work boots. On the other hand, the thin metal sheets that look absolutely perfect and flawless in the sales brochure often use significantly cheaper, imported paint finishes to save money. If you live anywhere near the coast, the abrasive salt in the ocean air will cause these cheap inferior finishes to rapidly chalk, bubble, and aggressively corrode. And when you inevitably call the corporate manufacturer to loudly complain about your rusted, visibly faded roof, they will calmly and legally tell you that fading and surface degradation is classified entirely as normal environmental weathering, and it is completely excluded from your 25-year warranty coverage. Failure point 2 is the terrible sarking lie. Sarking is the reflective silver foil underlay that is installed directly beneath your external roof material. It is your absolute last line of physical defense against unexpected water ingress, and your very first line of defense against extreme radiant summer heat. In the past, dedicated tradesmen used incredibly thick, robust, tear-resistant materials. Today, the standard industry installation uses single-layer synthetic foils that are incredibly thin, very cheap to buy in massive bulk rolls, and extremely fast to unroll across the timber roof trusses. The massive, catastrophic problems always arrive at the complex, intricate details of the roof structure, specifically the internal valleys, the plumbing pipe boots, and the frames of the skylights. On a volume production crew that is working way too fast to meet a daily quota, these critical, highly sensitive details get rushed. The thin synthetic foil is cut entirely too short, it is accidentally torn by a careless steel-capped boot, and it is hastily taped together with cheap, weak adhesives that easily melt away in the extreme summer heat. The truly terrifying thing about a hidden sarking failure is that water migrating into your roof during a heavy, multi-day East Coast low storm system does not announce itself immediately. It silently, continuously drips onto the hidden structural timber inside your dark roof cavity. By the time you finally see a brown, ugly water stain slowly expanding on your white plasterboard ceiling in the middle of your living room, the vital structural pine battens inside your roof cavity have already been soaking wet for several months. They are likely rotting, and they are actively attracting destructive termites to the damp wood. The required repair is no longer just a simple roofing patch job. It is a massive, incredibly expensive structural repair job that will require physically ripping down your interior plasterboard ceilings, hiring carpenters to replace the rotted timber, and repainting the entire room. Failure point 3 is the devastating ventilation trap. This is the specific, widespread issue that makes honest, old-school roofing professionals genuinely furious. Your enclosed roof cavity absolutely, fundamentally needs to breathe. Basic atmospheric physics dictates that heavier cold air should naturally enter at the bottom near the gutters and eaves, and the lighter hot air must be allowed to freely exit at the very highest possible point at the roof ridge. In the middle of an intense Australian summer, this natural, continuous airflow physically exhausts the extreme, trapped heat from the roof space, stopping your entire house from turning into a suffocating, unbearable oven. But in the vast majority of brand-new Australian project home builds, proper, functional roof ventilation is entirely ignored simply to save the builder a few $100s in material costs. The volume builder intentionally installs solid eaves with absolutely no ventilation grills, and they seal the roof completely tight with no spinning whirlybirds or modern low-profile ridge vents. Because the rapidly expanding hot air has absolutely nowhere to escape, the roof literally cooks from underneath. The trapped, stagnant air inside the dark cavity can easily and quickly reach temperatures of 60 to 70 degrees Celsius. This extreme, relentless baking heat slowly destroys your home from the inside out. It physically melts the flexible plastic ducting used for your incredibly expensive ducted air conditioning system, causing your conditioned air to leak into the roof. It actively degrades the protective plastic sheathing on your vital electrical wiring, creating a massive, hidden fire hazard. And it destroys the roofing materials themselves at double the normal deterioration speed. If you have chosen a currently trending dark-colored roof like charcoal grey or matte black, the heat absorption is absolutely astronomical, radiating directly down through your ceiling and forcing your air conditioning unit to work 3 times as hard, entirely destroying your household energy budget. And here is the ultimate, final insult. If you actually read the dense fine print, the manufacturer's warranty explicitly excludes any physical material failures that are caused by inadequate cavity ventilation. So, by failing to install cheap vents during construction, the builder has effectively and legally voided your protective warranty from the very first day you moved your furniture in. Failure point 4 is the critical fastener problem. This one is the absolute simplest mechanical failure. Yet it is happening everywhere, every single day, right across the country. Every single concrete or terracotta tile needs a highly specific engineered clipping pattern to secure it, and every single large metal sheet has strict, structurally engineered screwing patterns designed to hold it down safely against cyclonic, destructive winds. But large metal roofs naturally expand and contract significantly every single day as the sun rises, heats the metal, and then sets, cooling it down. On a rushed high-volume production job, the metal roofing screws are frequently and aggressively overdriven by heavy-handed, inexperienced apprentices using incredibly powerful battery-operated impact drivers. This massive excess force physically crushes the metal sheet downward and entirely destroys the small protective rubber neoprene washer sitting securely under the steel screw head. That instantly destroyed rubber washer creates a permanent microscopic leak point that will never heal. Alternatively, the screws are lazily underdriven, leaving a tiny, visible gap between the rubber washer and the metal sheet. When the first major, violent summer thunderstorm hits your suburb, the intense wind-driven rain is easily blown straight underneath those loose screws and sprayed directly into your dry roof cavity. It only genuinely costs the installer an extra 3 or 4 seconds per individual fastener to apply the correct torque pressure and do the job perfectly right. But when you are a subcontractor being paid purely by the square meter and you absolutely need to finish the entire house by 3 o'clock this afternoon so you can get to the next job, absolutely nobody is slowing down to check the tension on those thousands of tiny screws. Before we talk about what you should actually buy, I urgently need to warn you about the most common aggressive scam targeting older Australian homes right now: the roof restoration scam. You will very often get a brightly coloured flyer in your letterbox or a sudden knock on your front door from a friendly, highly persuasive salesman offering to completely restore your aging, dirty concrete tile roof for somewhere between $5,000 and $10,000. They confidently promise to high-pressure wash all the old dirt and moss away, completely rebed and repoint the crumbling cement ridge capping, and spray a thick glossy coat of magical ceiling paint right over the top to make the entire house look brand new again. Do not ever fall for this expensive trick. Aggressively high-pressure washing an old, brittle, 50-year-old concrete tile very often blasts away the absolute last remaining layers of its original factory-applied protective surface, making the tile significantly more porous and vulnerable than it was before they started. The fresh, wet cement pointing they hastily slap onto the ridge capping is very often done directly over the top of the old, dusty, crumbling mortar, meaning it will inevitably crack, separate, and fall out into your gutters during the very next major seasonal temperature shift, and that magical, expensive, glossy paint they promised. It almost never bonds correctly or permanently to 40-year-old, heavily weathered, highly porous concrete. Within 3 to 5 short years, that extremely expensive paint job will begin to violently peel, blister, and flake off in massive, ugly chunks, leaving your house looking like an absolute neglected disaster zone. A cosmetic roof restoration is almost always a temporary superficial bandage applied to a terminal, underlying structural problem. If the old concrete tiles are genuinely porous and actively failing, absolutely no amount of expensive spray paint will stop the water from getting in. You do not need a new coat of paint. You need a completely new roof. So, with all of these terrifying traps, loopholes, and aggressive scams waiting patiently for you in the market, what should you actually buy with your hard-earned savings? If you genuinely want to protect your family home and avoid having to do this whole stressful, expensive process all over again in 15 short years, there are exactly 2 specific roofing systems that honest, veteran professionals will recommend when the cameras are turned off and the conversation is completely transparent. Option number 2 is heavy gauge color bond steel or premium architectural standing seam metal. I cannot possibly emphasize the vital words heavy gauge enough. You want to demand metal that is at least 0.48 millimeters thick in base metal thickness, or ideally, for maximum protection, 0.55 millimeters thick. When a massive, destructive Australian hailstorm rolls aggressively through your local suburb, the difference between cheap 0.42 millimeter imported, thin steel and premium 0.55 millimeter architectural steel is the literal difference between your entire roof surviving perfectly intact and your roof looking exactly like the cratered surface of the moon. Done correctly, utilizing premium concealed hidden fasteners or perfectly torqued exposed screws, and heavily backed by thick, heavy-duty, breathable foil sarking, a premium metal roof is an absolute fortress. It violently and quickly sheds heavy tropical rain. It completely resists devastating bushfire ember attacks because there are absolutely no gaps or overlapping tiles for burning sparks to enter, and it handles the harsh, baking Australian sun brilliantly. If you choose to buy this specific roof, you are buying exactly one roof for the rest of your life, and your children probably will not ever need to replace it either. But the massive, unavoidable catch is the installer. The absolute best, most expensive metal in the entire world is completely useless and prone to catastrophic failure if it is installed by a rushed, inexperienced amateur. You must find a dedicated, independent contractor who specializes exclusively in metal roofing, has been doing it locally in your specific area for at least a decade, and can physically drive you to show you roofs they successfully installed 10 full years ago that still look absolutely perfect today. Option number 1 is premium, traditional terracotta tiles. This is the oldest answer in the book, and it is absolutely still the very best answer available today. Unlike cheap, mass-produced concrete tiles that quickly lose their artificial surface color and slowly become brittle, heavy sponges for rainwater, high-quality terracotta is natural kiln-fired clay. The deep, rich, beautiful color is literally baked right into the earth itself at extreme temperatures. It literally never, ever fades. It naturally and completely resists corrosive salt spray from the nearby ocean, and it will never shatter or crack from freezing winter frost. Terracotta tiles are significantly heavier than metal, which provides incredible, unmatched acoustic insulation for your home. When a heavy, violent storm hits your suburb, a traditional terracotta roof is whisper quiet inside the house, providing a peaceful environment compared to the deafening, overwhelming roar of heavy rain drumming on a cheap tin roof. Furthermore, the immense thermal mass of the heavy clay naturally and continuously regulates the overall temperature of your home, keeping the interior significantly cooler in the blazing summer and much warmer in the freezing winter. Properly installed, utilizing premium vapor-permeable sarking to expertly manage internal moisture and condensation, a terracotta roof easily and reliably lasts 50 years, 60 years, or even more. Yes, it absolutely costs significantly more upfront to purchase, and it absolutely requires highly skilled, old-school, experienced tradesmen who actually understand timber load bearing capacities and complex roof weight distribution. But a premium terracotta roof will realistically and confidently outlast the structural house itself. To successfully protect yourself from the volume builders and the sale sharks operating in this highly unregulated industry, here is the one absolute golden rule that saves you everything. You must remember 3 simple, powerful words before you ever sign any legal contract or hand over any financial deposit: ventilation, penetrations, proof. Let us break down exactly what those 3 words mean for your negotiation process. Ventilation. Before a single piece of new material goes down on your timber trusses, you must insist on a comprehensive written ventilation plan. Ask the salesman directly, face to face, exactly how fresh, cool air will physically enter the lower eaves of the house and exactly how the trapped, hot air will successfully exit the top ridge. If they look at you with a blank stare, wave their hands, and tell you that dedicated roof ventilation is simply not necessary for modern homes, politely but firmly show them the front door and never call them again. Penetrations. You must get the exact, specific flashing specifications completely detailed in writing on your quote. Every single glass skylight, every single brick chimney, every single exhaust pipe, and every single folded valley on your roof is a major, highly vulnerable entry point for rushing rainwater. A cheap rushed volume contractor will simply pump these wide gaps full of cheap, temporary silicone sealant that will aggressively dry out in the sun, crack wide open, and catastrophically fail in under 5 years. A true, dedicated professional will completely fabricate custom lead or utilize premium deck-tight rubber flashings that will remain completely watertight and flexible for several decades. A contractor who absolutely will not put their specific flashing methods in writing on the contract is absolutely planning to cut major corners and rip you off. Proof. You must actively ask for real, verifiable references from specific jobs they successfully installed 7 to 10 full years ago in your exact local climate. That 7 to 10 year mark is the exact critical time frame when cheap, rushed installation quality really starts to reveal its ugly, failing nature. Take the time to actually drive past those referenced houses. Look closely at the roof from the street. If the contractor simply cannot provide these long-term, successful references, they either have not been in business long enough for you to trust them with your life savings, or they have something massive and terrible to hide from you. Finally, you must deeply understand that the loudly advertised 25-year manufacturer warranty only covers the physical materials sitting in the box, but it almost rarely covers the actual physical labor required to remove and reinstall them. The only specific warranty that genuinely protects your bank account from disaster is a strict, legally written workmanship warranty of at least 5 to 7 years. Clearly detailed in the legal contract you sign before the metal scaffolding ever goes up around your house. If the brand new roof actively leaks in year 4 because an apprentice rushed the sarking tape or heavily overdriven a metal screw, the written workmanship warranty is the absolute only legal mechanism forcing the company to come back to your house and completely fix their mistake for free. Your roof is undoubtedly the single most important structural component of your entire home. It actively protects your family, it protects your treasured possessions, and it protects your life savings from the elements. It is also the one specific component that the modern corporate building industry has worked the absolute hardest to cleverly turn into a repeating, highly profitable revenue stream that regularly extracts tens of thousands of dollars from you every 10 to 15 years. But you know the right powerful questions to ask them now. Ventilation, penetrations, proof. Ask these exact questions out loud during the initial quote. Look the salesman directly in the eye when you ask them, and you will instantly separate the honest, veteran, professional contractors worth hiring from the greedy, volume-driven scam artists simply hoping you stay quiet until they have quickly cashed your check and moved on to the next state. If this video opened your eyes and potentially saved you from making a devastating and incredibly expensive mistake with your family home, hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications right now. Next week, I'm completely uncovering the massive, hidden, toxic failures in Australian home wall and ceiling insulation that are secretly costing you thousands of extra dollars in wasted electricity bills every single year. It is a massive, unchecked industry scandal, and it is going to make you just as incredibly angry as this one did. Protect your family home, aggressively protect your household budget, and I will definitely talk to you soon.